Hey everyone, lines have been drawn and crossed, shots have been fired, and blood has spilled. The Hilltop is doing everything they can to start another war. You'd think that with Rick gone, all the meddling and messing around with other groups and starting fights would go away with him, but clearly that wasn't the case. Not even close. This wouldn't be the world of The Walking Dead unless somebody was doing something stupid that cost other people their lives. We have several points taken from the comic in this episode, so let's jump right into it. Okay, I need to start out by saying there's going to be some spoilers in this video, but they're towards the end, and I'll give you another warning before they come up. Spoilers for the Whisperers arc in the comics are all throughout the video. You've been warned. The first aspect taken from the comics was Henry trailing the Whisperers and getting caught. He left a note in the last episode saying he was going after Lydia. He finds the Whisperers, and while trailing them, one comes up behind him and tells him to put his staff down. He was not prepared for Henry's staff skills and gets knocked out.
You are not prepared!
Beta Ray grabs him from behind and throws him in front of Alpha, who decides to take him with them. He spends some time with them tied up as a prisoner and gets an inside look at how they live in their camp, including how Alpha deals with dissent among her followers. So Henry going after Lydia and getting caught by the Whisperers was taken entirely from the comics. The biggest difference though is it's Carl who's in love with Lydia and goes to her rescue.
Carl!
The biggest change from AMC though is Carl is caught by Alpha after she finds him resting. He makes sure to distance himself from Hilltop, saying he came on his own to make sure Lydia was safe. He's not really taken prisoner though, as Alpha starts to walk away and invites him to come along with them. Just like AMC though, the Whisperers have a camp with hundreds of them in their group. While at day camp, he gets to see how the Whisperers live. He also gets to see them making a new suit for Lydia. While talking with Lydia, Alpha pulls him aside to talk one-on-one. She takes her mask off and asks how it is he survived this whole time. Carl tells her it was Rick who keeps him alive and mocks her way of life. She confesses to Carl that she brought him along to show him how her people live and that he'd go home to tell his people that Alpha's group is to be left alone. Carl boldly states that this will not happen while Lydia is in danger, referring to her, being raped. Alpha concludes that she must learn more about his people and takes off. This is where the fair starts in the comics, and Alpha sneaks in there to learn more about the communities. If you're curious about what the significance is of the fair, make sure to check out my other video. And while you're at it, why don't you give this a thumbs up and subscribe? Let's face it, if you watched this far already, you know you love it. A few things took place during Henry's time at camp that was inspired by but not directly mirrored from the comics. A Whisperer challenges Alpha over her decisions to rescue Lydia. Alpha claims his girlfriend was behind it and kills her in front of him, and then kills the other. In the comics, after Lydia leaves, Alpha takes off to be alone and starts crying. A Whisperer catches her and promises he won't tell anyone, but she better not do that in front of the others. After she composes herself, she assures him it's being taken care of, and she pulls out a knife and cuts his throat, killing him. Another comes across this and asks what happens, to which Alpha replies that he challenged her and now he's with the others that tried. Something else AMC used from the comics is the whole Beta. O. Henry is caught by a large Whisperer in a long coat who takes him to Alpha and is dressed as Beta.
Thank you, Beta.
Just like in AMC's version, Beta is in the comics, and he's Alpha's second in command and advisor. I wonder if there's a third in command named Gamma. He doesn't make his appearance though until after the fair, and it's Negan he captures, not Henry or Carl. Negan is led out by a kid named Brandon and makes his way to find the Whisperers, where he gets surrounded by a group of them led by Beta. Negan tells him he wants to join their group, and Beta takes him back to their camp to see Alpha. The last part of the show that was taken from the comics was Henry and Lydia being rescued from the Whisperers camp. In the cover of darkness, Daryl and Connie disguise themselves as Whisperers and lead a small group of walkers into their camp to cause an uproar. During the panic, he grabs Henry, who demands they take Lydia too. He reluctantly agrees and the four of them escape. So this is mashed together from a few different pieces in the comics. The first being, obviously, like we said before, it's Carl who's saved from the Whisperers, not Henry. The biggest difference though is there's no in the cover of darkness rescue attempt. Alpha just gives him back to Rick, who went after Carl when he found out that he was missing and probably chased after Lydia. Rick, along with Michonne, Andrea, and Dante, go into the Whisperers' territory to search for Carl. They're approached by a group of Whisperers who say they'll only take Rick back to their camp. After a serious conversation about Rick's group leaving the Whisperers alone, she lets him leave with her son. See, much more reasonable than AMC's version, for now at least. Carl demands Lydia goes with, and after Lydia breaks down and starts crying, Alpha banishes her, asking Rick to take her with him. Rick leaves with the two of them with no interference, no objections, nothing like that. The second part AMC used from the comics was the whole concept of Daryl and Connie attacking while dressed as Whisperers. This was also used in the comics, but much later, after the fighting is already started. Okay, I know that was kind of a spoiler, but if you honestly didn't think there was going to be some sort of fighting between the two groups, you haven't really been watching Walking Dead that long. It's Dwight, though, who decides to use the tactic of wearing skins like the Whisperers do, not Daryl, since he doesn't exist in the comics. They do this so they can split up a large herd being steered by them. He kills a Whisperer that was steering a herd and takes his outfit. Here's where Dwight starts to go down a really dark path. As he kills the Whisperer, he refers to them as it, even though it's still a person he just murdered. It's kind of a way of dehumanizing one's enemy, so there's really no guilt about murdering. Along with Michonne and others, they infiltrate the herd and start killing the Whisperers one at a time. The next aspect AMC used from the comics was the whole Negan in a cell being questioned by Michonne. Her exchange with Negan begins after a fight with the Alexandria Council, with her going against the fair, citing security concerns. One of those concerns was the fact that Negan was able to escape. Later, she goes down to question Negan and asks why he returned. He confesses there's nothing left out there for him and he figured he'd come back. He does try to convince Michonne that she can start to trust him, saying he's changed. While he was free, he could have bashed her head in or done some really messed up stuff, but instead, he caused no harm and just came back and went right into his cell. He suggests that he's meant for something more and she can use his experience to help her with the issues she's having with the council. Michonne leaves once she spots Judith watching them from the window. This exchange was taken from the comics from two separate conversations Negan had with Rick. Just like in the show, Negan's cell is left unlocked accidentally. The biggest difference though is in the comics he never takes off. He stays there and waits for Rick to return. Going down to check in on him, Rick sees the door wide open. Negan explains he could have left any time but didn't. He starts to go into all the things he could have done while he was out free, including killing Rick. Asking Rick if he knows why he didn't leave his cell, he says while he doesn't expect Rick to trust him, he pulled that stunt so Rick can recognize that they can start building trust between them. Negan does offer advice to Rick on how to deal with their disagreements over leadership, but that happens much later. After the events of the fair, the citizens of Alexandria are mad at Rick for what they perceive as inaction on his part. Rick goes down to get some advice from Negan, who tells him that people necessarily don't want action, they just want to feel safe. He advises Rick to use the old us versus them to unite the communities against a common threat, that common threat being the Whisperers. Another thing AMC used from the comic was the whole concept of a radio. In their version, Eugene started tinkering with the radio and concluding it didn't have the range, he and Rosita went to set up a relay to boost the signal. We know how this went, as Michonne went off on the council for keeping her in the dark about this. During this time in the comics, Eugene is also trying to get a radio working. However, he gets the radio later on at the fair. Also, there's no side mission to expand the range or anything. After the events of the fair, he eventually gets it working and starts talking with someone from another community. Like Michonne did in AMC's version, Rick eventually finds out, but much later on, and though he's upset for not knowing about the radio, he doesn't quite get as mad as Michonne did. The significance of this radio though is it sets up the whole next story arc. So AMC is shooting a huge load of foreshadowing all over our faces. Fun fact, this isn't the first Easter egg AMC has given us in regards to what comes after the Whisperer story. Okay, the last bit AMC used from comics was the whole kind of rift and divide between Gabriel and Rosita. Gabriel finds out Rosita is pregnant and the baby is not his.
You are not.
He doesn't know how to handle it and tries to break things off with her by distancing himself. He's talked out of this though by Eugene, who, even though is madly in love with Rosita, tells Gabriel that she's the best thing to happen to her and not to let her go. In the comics though, it's actually Eugene who's with Rosita, not Gabriel. Good job, Eugene! Something went your way. She's also pregnant with Sadiq's baby. Just like Gabriel in AMC's version, Eugene doesn't know how to handle it and there's a lot of fighting and distances between them. So as you see, this week's episode took a lot from the comics, some directly and some just the concept and idea. What was not in the comics though was the infighting of the council and the communities at odds with each other. Also not in the comics was Lydia being asked to kill Henry. So AMC is gearing things up very fast. We only have 4 episodes left this season. Okay, do you remember that spoiler warning I gave at the beginning of the episode? Here it comes. Next week, AMC is introducing a new group exclusive to the show called the Highwaymen, who are probably led by a man named Ozzy. In the teaser trailers and previews, we actually saw Ozzy at the fair. In the comics, it's Alpha who goes to the fair, and during her time there, she lures a bunch of citizens out who then end up being murdered by her to make a point to Rick that she's not to be crossed. Since Alpha and the Whisperers are pretty much known by everyone except the Kingdom, the Highwaymen might be AMC's bridge to that part in the comics. You know, as kind of like a mercenary group for hire to get Lydia back for her. So I don't know about you, but I am really excited to see how AMC concludes this season. It's already well known that AMC has signed The Walking Dead on for a 10th season, so the events of this season finale will set up what happens in the 10th season, or at least the first half. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Your support really helps small independent content creators like mine. Please help support my channel by checking out some of my other videos, like maybe last week's episode or even the episode of the fair. And in case you didn't check it out, I actually have non-Walking Dead videos on this channel, like some comedy skits I made or fan-made music videos that you can check out. Leave your thoughts and comments in the section below, and until next time, keep on whispering.